Let me ask you something. When was the last time you really failed at something? Not a small mistake. I'm talking about the kind of failure that made you question whether you should even keep trying. Now, here's the real question. What did you do next? Because here's what I've learned. That moment right after you fall is the most important moment of your entire life. Not the failure itself. What you do in the 24 hours after is the real thing. Most people do one of the three things. They pretend it didn't hurt and move on too fast. They spiral into shame and decide they're not good enough. Or they blame everyone else and learn nothing. All three keep you stuck. But there's a fourth option, and it's the difference between people who stay stuck at 30, 35, and 40, and people who keep growing, keep building, keep getting stronger. I'm going to show you exactly what that fourth option is. It's a 3-step process that works every single time you fall. And trust me, if you're doing anything worth doing, you're going to fall a lot. By the end of this video, you know exactly what to do next time something doesn't work out. And you understand why failure might be the best thing that ever happened to you, if you know how to use it. Let's start with something that nobody wants to admit. You're going to fail a lot more than you will succeed. That's just math. For every promotion you get, you will get passed over multiple times. For every successful relationship, you have ones that didn't work out. For every business win, you have setbacks. Most people I know handle failure in one of a few predictable ways. The denier. It's fine. I don't even care, whatever. This person pretends that failure didn't hurt. They move on quickly without processing what happened. The problem is, all that unprocessed pain comes out sideways, usually as anger or just shutting down emotionally. The blamer. It's not my fault. It was the economy, my boss, my ex, bad timing. This person can't fail because nothing is ever their responsibility. They've got a story for why every setback was someone else's fault. The problem, if nothing is ever your fault, you never learn anything. The shamer. I'm just not good enough. I should have known better. I'm an idiot. This person takes all the responsibility, but in a way that's completely useless. Instead of learning from mistakes, they just beat themselves up and decide they are very broken. I've been all of the three people at different times, and here's what I've learned. None of these approaches work. They all keep you stuck. The denier never processes his emotions, so he keeps making the same mistakes. The blamer never takes responsibility, so he never grows. And the shamer is too busy hating himself that he never extracts the lesson. But there's a fourth way, a way that actually works. And it's built on one simple idea. The story you tell yourself about the failure determines whether you stay down or get back up. The Rising Strong Framework. Researcher Brené Brown studied people who failed and came back stronger. She wanted to know, what do people who recover from setbacks do differently than people who stay stuck? She found a pattern, a 3-step process that shows over and over in people who rise strong. She calls it the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution. And I'm going to show you exactly how to use this in your own life. But first, let me show you the framework visually. Think of it like climbing stairs after you've fallen. You can't skip steps. You have to go through each one to get to the top. The reckoning is about recognizing that you're down and that it matters. This sounds obvious, but most of us skip this step entirely. We feel bad, we feel shame, we feel hurt, and we immediately try to make those feelings go away. The reckoning says, stop, feel it, name it. Here's what this actually looks like. Something goes wrong, you get fired, you get dumped, your business fails, your pitch gets rejected, whatever. Your body has a response before your brain even does. Your chest gets tight, your face gets hot, your stomach drops. These are physical signals that something important just happened. Most people ignore these signals. They just push them down, distract themselves, and have a few drinks, hit the gym too hard, whatever it takes to not feel the feeling. The reckoning says, pay attention to those signals. There are data. So step 1 is simple. When you fail, stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Not what you think, what you feel in your body. Maybe it's embarrassment, Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's fear that you're not good enough. Maybe it's sadness about what you lost. Whatever it is, name it. Say it out loud if you have to. I feel embarrassed. I feel scared. I feel like I let people down. This isn't therapy talk. This is intelligence gathering. You can't fix a problem you won't acknowledge. Here's a real example from my life. A few years ago, I was working on a personal project I was really excited about. I put months into it. I told everyone about it. I was sure I was going to be big. But it flopped completely. Barely anyone cared. My first instinct was to say, whatever, it was just a side thing anyway. It didn't really care that much. But that was me trying to skip the reckoning. I forced myself to stop and actually feel what was happening, and what I felt was humiliation. I would have told anyone that this was going to be big, and now I looked like an idiot. That was the real feeling under everything else. Once I named it, once I said I feel humiliated, and I could work with that. But if I would just pushed it down, it would have kept me forever trying anything big again. Step 2, the rumble. Okay, so you've recognized you're down. You felt the feeling. Now comes the hard part, the rumble. The rumble is about getting honest about the story you're telling yourself about what happened. And here's the key insight. The story you're telling yourself right now is probably wrong. Let me explain what I mean by the story. When something bad happens, your brain immediately creates a narrative to explain it. This happens in seconds, often before you're even conscious of it. You get rejected, and instantly your brain supplies the story. I didn't get the promotion because my boss didn't like me, or my business failed because the market isn't ready for my ideas. Though these stories feel true, they feel like facts, but they're not facts, they are interpretations. And usually, they're interpretations designed to protect your ego, not to tell you the truth. The rumble is about challenging the first story. It's about asking, what if the story I'm telling myself is incomplete or wrong? Here's how to do it. First, write down the story you're telling yourself, actually write it. The story that I'm telling myself is, for me, with that failed project, the story was, people didn't care about my project because I'm not as smart or talented as I thought I was. I'm a fraud, and everyone can see it now. Second, ask yourself, what are the facts and what are my interpretations? Facts are the things that everyone would agree happened. I launched a project, I got 50 views, 3 people signed up. Interpretations are the meaning you're adding. That means I'm not talented. That means people think I'm a fraud. Can you see the difference? Third, ask yourself, what else could be true? Maybe people didn't see it because my marketing was weak. Maybe the timing was off. Maybe the concept was too good, but the execution wasn't there yet. Maybe the audience I targeted wasn't right. Notice, none of these alternative stories let me off the hook. They're not excuses, but they are also not character assassinations. They are just more complete, more usable stories. The rumble is uncomfortable because it requires you to sit with uncertainty. It requires you to admit that you don't actually know the full truth about why something happened. And it requires you to consider that maybe you're not fundamentally broken. Maybe you just need to try a different approach. The revolution. Step 3, the revolution. The revolution is what happens when you come out of the other side of the rumble with a new, more accurate story. It's when you integrate what you learn and become a different person because of it. This isn't about feeling better, this is about fundamental transformation. When you go through the reckoning and the rumble honestly, you come out with 3 things. First, you understand what actually happened, not just what you feared happened. Second, you know what you need to do differently next time. Third, you're no longer afraid of failure in the same way because you've proven to yourself that you can fall and get back up. The last part is huge. Every time you go through this process, you build evidence that failure isn't the end of the story. You build confidence in your ability to handle setbacks. Let me tell you what happened with my failed project. After I went through the rumble, I realized the real story. I built something without really understanding what my audience needed. I was so excited about my idea that I didn't do the unglamorous work of validating whether anyone actually wanted. That was a useful story. That gave me something to work with. So I started over, But this time I talked to potential users first. I built in public. I adjusted based on feedback. And you know what? The next version worked way better. But more than that, I was different. I was no longer afraid of launching things because I'd proven to myself that even when something fails, I can learn from it and come back stronger. That's the revolution. It's not just a better outcome, it's a better you. Let me be real with you about why this process is hard. There are three main reasons why people stay down after they fail. The reason one is shame. Shame is the feeling that there's something really wrong with you. Not that you did something bad, that you are bad. When you fail, shame tells you, see, this proves what you always suspected. You're not good enough. You don't deserve success. You should stop trying. Shame is a liar, but it's a convincing one. Here's how shame keeps you down. It makes you afraid to look honestly at what happened because you're scared of what you find. You're scared that if you really examine your failure, you confirm your worst fears about yourself. So instead of going through the rumble, you either avoid thinking about it entirely or you accept the shame story without questioning. The antidote to shame is not positive thinking, it's courage. The courage to look at what happened and separate what you did from who you are. You can make mistakes without being a mistake. You can fail at things without being a failure, but you only learn this by going through the process, not by avoiding it. The reason two, ego protection. This is the opposite problem. Instead of drowning in shame, some guys protect their ego by never admitting they failed at all. Everything is someone else's fault. The market was wrong. The timing was bad. People are stupid. Their ex was crazy. Their boss was an idiot. Ego protection feels better in the short term, but it's poison in the long term. If nothing is ever your fault, you never learn anything. You just keep making the same mistakes and blaming different people. The rumble requires you to look at your own role honestly, not to beat yourself up, but to learn. And that requires setting your ego aside and being willing to say, I got that wrong. That's hard. Reason 3. The stories we inherit. Here's something most people don't think about. The stories you tell yourself about failure aren't all yours. Maybe some of them you inherit. Maybe you grew up in a family where mistakes were met with anger or disappointment. So now, when you fail, you hear your dad's voice in your head telling you that you're not trying hard enough. Maybe you grew up in a culture that worships success and sees failure as shameful, so now, any setback feels like a referendum on your worth as a person. Maybe you had a teacher or a coach who told you that you didn't have what it takes, and now, every time something doesn't work out, you hear that voice confirming their prediction. These inherent stories are powerful because we often don't even realize we're carrying them. We think they are our own thoughts, our own assessments, but they're not. They are recordings of other people's voices playing on repeat. The rumble is your chance to identify these inherent stories and decide whether you want to keep them. Just because someone told you a story about who you are doesn't mean it's true. Here's what I want you to understand. The ability to rise strong after failure is not a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you develop, and like any skill, you get better at it with practice. The first time you go through this process, it's going to be messy. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to want to skip steps or rush through it. That's normal. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. Because here's what happens when you practice rising strong. You build resilience. Resilience isn't about being tough enough that nothing affects you. That's not resilience, that's numbness. Real resilience is knowing when you fall, you have a process for getting back up. It's confidence in your ability to handle difficulty, not confidence that you never face difficulty. Every time you go through the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution, you're proving to yourself, I can handle this, I can fall and get back up. I can learn and grow from setbacks. That proofs accumulates. After you've risen strong a few times, you stop being so afraid of failure because you know it's not permanent. You know you have a way through. You make better decisions. So when you're not afraid of failure, you make different choices. You take calculated risks. You try new things. You have those difficult conversations. So you go for opportunities that might not work out. Why? Because you know that even if it doesn't work, you'll be okay. You have a process for handling setbacks. This is how successful people operate. They're not lucky, they are not fearless. They just know how to fail forward. You build deeper relationships. This one might surprise you, but stay with me. When you're afraid of failure, you hide your struggles, right? You pretend everything is fine. You don't let people see you when you're down. But when you know how to rise strong, you don't have to hide anymore. You can be real about your struggles because you're not ashamed of them. You can ask for help because you know asking for help isn't weakness. And here's what's interesting. When you're real about your struggles, other people feel safe being real about theirs. You create connection based on authenticity instead of performance. The strongest relationships I have are with people who've seen me fail and support me through it, not people who only see me when I'm winning. You define success differently. Most people define success as never failing. So they play safe, avoid risk, and then wonder why their lives feel so small. When you get good at rising strong, you start to define success differently. Success becomes about growth, not perfection. It becomes about trying things that matter, not about maintaining an image. You start to see failure as data, not as a verdict on your worth, and that changes everything. Let me tell you about a friend of mine. He's one of the most successful guys I know. Built multiple businesses, great family, seems to have it all together. I asked him what his secret was. He said, "I've failed more than anyone you know. I've lost money, lost opportunities, made terrible decisions, but I've gotten really good at learning from my failures instead of being destroyed by them." That's the difference. Not that he doesn't fail, that he's gotten good at rising strong. How do you use this right now? Okay, let's get tactical. You're probably watching this because you're dealing with some kind of setback right now, or you're afraid of taking a risk because you might fail. Here's exactly how to use the Rising Strong framework in your life. If you're currently down, step 1, set aside 30 minutes, no phone, no distractions. Ask yourself, what am I feeling about this situation? Write it down. Don't edit yourself. Don't try to sound tough or smart. Just write the raw truth of how you feel. Step 2, the rumble. Write this sentence. The story I'm telling myself is, and then complete it honestly. Write whatever story your brain is running on repeat. Then ask, what are the facts, things everyone would agree happened, and what are the interpretations, the meaning I'm adding? Separate them, then ask, what else could be true? Come up with at least 3 alternative explanations. Step 3, the revolution. Based on your rumble, ask yourself, what do I need to do differently? And what did I learn about myself? Then ask, what is my next move? Not your perfect move, just your next move. Do this on paper. There is something about writing down that forces you to be more honest and thorough than just thinking about it. If you're afraid to take a risk, use the framework in advance. If it doesn't work out, how will I rise strong from it? Walk through the process hypothetically. What would I feel? The reckoning. What story might I tell myself, and what would the real truth be? Rumble. What would I learn and what would I do next? The revolution. When you have a plan for how you handle failure, failure becomes less scary. You're not going into the situation blindly. You're going in knowing that even if you fall, you will know how to get back up. This doesn't eliminate risk, but it makes risk feel less manageable. Daily practice. Here's something most people don't do but should. Practice this framework on small failures, not just big ones. You said something awkward in a meeting. You got into an argument with your spouse. You missed a deadline. You made a small mistake at work. These aren't life-changing failures, but they are perfect opportunities to practice rising strong. Use the framework on the small stuff so it's automatic when the big stuff happens. The people who are best at handling major setbacks are the ones who've ever practiced on minor setbacks. They've built the skill. Now I want to talk to you about the 24-hour rule. This is something I learned the hard way. When something goes wrong, give yourself 24 hours before you make any big decisions or judgments. In the first 24 hours, you're still in reactive mode. Your story about what happened is probably dominated by emotion, not clarity. You're likely to either beat yourself up too much or just protect your ego too much. After 24 hours, you can start the rumble with a clear head. You've processed the initial emotional punch, and now you can look at the situation more objectively. This doesn't mean you ignore what happened for 24 hours. It means you acknowledge it, the reckoning, but you want to interpret it, the rumble, till you've got some distance. Here's what happens over time when you commit to this process. You become a different kind of person. Not someone who never fails, someone who feels better. You develop emotional range. Most people have a narrow emotional range. We're either fine or we're angry. That's about it. When you practice the reckoning, when you regularly check with what you're actually feeling, you develop emotional literacy. You get better at identifying and naming what you're experiencing. This matters because emotions are information. When you accurately identify what you're feeling, you can respond appropriately instead of just reacting. Fear feels different from anger, feels different from shame, feels different from sadness, and each one requires a different response. But if you can't tell them apart, you can't respond effectively. You get comfortable with uncertainty. The rumble teaches you that you often don't know the full truth about situation, and that's okay. You can move forward without perfect information. This is huge for people our age because we're in a phase of life full of uncertainty. Career uncertainty, relationship uncertainty, financial uncertainty, uncertainty about what we're becoming. Most people try to eliminate uncertainty, which is impossible. The people who rise strong learn to operate effectively despite uncertainty. They make decisions, take action, and adjust based on feedback. They don't wait for perfect clarity because they know it's not coming. When you practice separating facts from interpretations in the rumble, you get better at not taking everything personally. Your boss gives you critical feedback. Instead of immediately thinking he hates me or I'm terrible at my job, you can look at the facts. He identified 3 specific areas where my work could improve. That's useful information, not a personal attack. Someone rejects you. Instead of thinking, I'm not good enough, you can think, we weren't a match. This doesn't mean you never take responsibility. It means that you take responsibility for what's actually yours and let go of what isn't. You build real confidence. Fake confidence is, I'm going to succeed because I'm great. However, real confidence is, I'm going to try, and if I fail, I'll figure it out and I'll try again. Real confidence is anti-fragile. It actually gets stronger through stress and failure. Every time you try, every time you rise strong, you're adding evidence to your internal database. I can handle this, I've been here before. I know what to do. That accumulated evidence becomes unshakable confidence, not in your ability to never fail, but in your ability to handle whatever comes. You learn that failure is just feedback, not a permanent verdict. You start today, not from a place of shame, but from a place of commitment. You decide that your past patterns don't have to predict your future. You build new patterns starting now. We're living in a time where failure is more visible than ever. Social media shows everyone's highlight reel. Everyone looks like they're winning all the time. This creates 2 problems. First, we think everyone else has figured it out and we're the only ones struggling. That's not true. Everyone is struggling. They're not just posting about it. Second, we're more afraid to fail publicly because we think failure means we're behind, we're not good enough, we're not keeping up. But here's the reality. The people who are actually building successful lives, they are failing constantly. They are just failing forward. They are rising strong. The ability to fail and get back up is becoming the most important skills you can develop. Because the world is changing fast. What worked 5 years ago doesn't work now. You're going to have to try new things, and many of them won't work. The question isn't whether you face setbacks. The question is, have you developed the skill of rising strong? Because I promise you, 5 years from now, you're going to look back at your life and see a pattern. Either you see a pattern of staying stuck after failures, or you see a pattern of rising strong and getting better each time. That pattern doesn't start 5 years from now. It starts today with the next setback you face, with the next risk you take. You get to choose which pattern you build in. So remember the framework, the reckoning, the rumble, the revolution. Feel it, question your story, learn, and move forward. This isn't about becoming invincible, it's about becoming resilient. It's about building a life where failure doesn't stop you, it redirects you. The people who rise strong aren't special, they just have a process, and now you do too. Next time you fall, and you will fall, you know what to do. Go through the steps. Thank you for watching. If this somehow resonated with you, please subscribe for more real talks about building a life worth living. And remember, it's not about never failing, it's about how you get back up. And as usual, I will see you next week. Bye bye.